There are cinematic masterpieces out there, whether it's for their story, art direction, or even characters, and they range from genre to genre. Most of the film's target audience for these films tend to be more suited towards older audiences. Even if you look at IMDb's top 250 films, the top 10 are very much more adult films, with films like Schindler's List and Shawshank Redemption. Animated films are considered in very high regards, with films like The Lion King, WALL-E, and The Iron Giant all being on IMDb's top 250 list. But that's all they've ever really been considered: good animated films. But what if I told you there's a film out there that isn't just a good animation film, but a masterpiece that should have brought animation films into being taken incredibly seriously as a genre of storytelling? That film is Rango, a film that is so silly and goofy, as well as coming from a studio that brings us some of the silliest and funniest cartoon shows ever, and yet sets a high standard for being a beautiful piece of art. Hi there, it's me, the Average Critic, and let's talk about Rango, an accidental masterpiece. So let's get the obvious out of the way. Rango is a Western film which has plenty of homages to the classic genre, with an incredible amount of references for die-hard Western fans, but it has an incredible twist whereby your lead nameless character is an actor who is on the discovery of self-identity. Notice how I say nameless, as he gets the name Rango from a bottle of cactus juice in a saloon, so we never find out Rango's real name, which not only is another nod to the classic spaghetti Western collection starring Clint Eastwood, but further enhances the film's themes of loneliness and identity. You see, your lead character doesn't form into the classic Western tropes in the slightest. Your lead character isn't some badass hat-tipping gunslinger. Instead, Rango is an actor who gets thrusted from his previous life, which again we never see, further adding to this film's themes of identity, embarking on an adventure of survival in a Western setting and a crazy ensemble cast. Now, what do all Westerns have in common? Your lead character is quite simply total badass. Rango, however,
crunchy, creamy, cookie, candy, cupcake.
Rango is weird. This film has some of the most unique and awkward humor, which in my opinion has never been done in animated films. There are no silly poop jokes, instead relies on characters and awkward humor of something closer to the US version of The Office. Where studios like Pixar work on a much smarter and cleverly evolved humor to engross the audience, Rango works on its tropes of being like a Western, of having the characters be as weird as the world they are in. So when a character does something like this...
Alright, which one of you fellas needs a checkup?
Awkward.
It works because of its setting. Westerns have always had wacky and wonderful characters where the Old West brought out more individuality and uniqueness between people. Western as a genre is something that blew up immensely in the 1950s through to the 1960s, almost like superhero movies today. It was the time of golden age of the Western cinema, and there have been a few strong contenders like Django Unchained and the remake of The Magnificent Seven in modern times in which Western films have come through. You see, Westerns have kind of become a product of itself, where the cliche of the gunslinger walking into the saloon and the music turning off and everyone looking, it truly is a thing of the past. But where Rango doesn't steal those tropes as a direct copy and paste, it does so for parody and humour. So the Western style is nothing more than a tool for humour and style, which doesn't overlook the story and characters which are nothing from the Western genre. Rango is nothing like a traditional Western hero. Most Westerns tell the story of redemption and revenge, and Westerns certainly don't have this level of absurdity when it comes to the humour. Everything from the gorgeous cinematography and one of the coolest Western sequences I have ever seen, which is the canyon chase sequence, which uses one of the best versions of the famous Flight of the Valkyries musical scores with a banjo bluegrass version, which is funny as well as awesome. So it mixes Western tropes with a plane-like sequence straight out of World War II that balances all with some brilliant humour mixed in. Action sequences are always hard to pull off in animation, not only from an animating perspective, but from an action perspective. Films like John Wick get praised because of its realistic take on the action genre, with the action being in camera and performed by trained stunt performers. You feel the punch John Wick gives and takes, so the animators in Rango have to think like combat stage stunt performers in order to make the action interesting. And Rango doesn't miss a beat. With every fun fight sequence, it has awesome camera angles and a brilliant crescendo of score done by the incredible Hans Zimmer. This sequence is incredibly refreshing, as again, it sure has a few classic Western tropes of riding on horseback, or in this case, chicken or bird back or whatever these animals are, with lots of guns and bullets, but thrown in with that humour with hilarious intent. Rango has an incredible sequence scored by Johann Strauss, the Blue Danube, I hope I'm saying that correctly, which again has been parodied a million times, but it really combats the seriousness of what we expect from a Western film. This scene is absolutely hilarious because it just combats the Western style, giving it something fresh and unique. This film truly revolutionized the Western genre as making it much more fun and exciting. So obviously this film is already a great film, with awesome action sequences and a real nod to Western genre, and if it did just that, it would still be successful. It would have made money, and it would have stayed on the shelf as just a decent animated film. But what makes the film more than it needs to be is the desire to be something more. At the final end of the movie, we get the end of the road sequence. After Rango is revealed to be a fake, he walks off into the desert, and we are treated to an incredibly beautiful sequence that is not afraid to ask the audience to invest in this film's themes. It uses a beautiful piece of borrowed music used in the film The Kingdom, composed by Danny Elfman. We have an incredibly enlightening sequence as Rango crosses the road, which is used as a metaphor for death or heaven, crossing over to the other side with an awesome performance by Timothy Olyphant, playing the spirit of the West, who is used as a higher form of life as a representation for God, and of course is a brilliant use of the exact likeness and impression of Clint Eastwood's character, the man with no name, who reflects what Rango wants to become and chooses to become as he tells him no man can walk out of his own story. From this point on, the film has no laughs, no jokes, and is played incredibly straight, which I kinda love. The pace of the whole movie is incredibly slow, as it really takes its time to introduce characters and takes the audience at a very slow pace. For an animated film, this is usually a big problem, as they want to keep the pace decidedly quicker to stop certain younger audiences from becoming bored. But Rango takes its time to enjoy the scenery of this beautiful film. It could have just been an easy, fun Western adventure movie, but instead chooses to become something more. As Rango's quest of identity, like Clint Eastwood's character in Western tropes, Rango is the man with no name, and so he doesn't return to explain who he was or who he is, but chooses who he wants to be, which is Rango. Despite being a name he made up, he chooses to be that person and be the hero he wants to be. Which of course the Old West is a great setting for this kind of theme, as the villains want to leave the Old West behind, as the mayor said, becoming civilized and getting rid of uniqueness. In today's world of modern technology and civilized life, it becomes incredibly difficult to be your own individual person, something the Old West, in my opinion, very much didn't have. People could be their own person and be an individual. In today's world, when we're constantly looking up to big action movie stars and trying to mold ourselves into people we look up to, it's very hard to be yourself. Rango is a film that could have just been an easily acceptable and successful animation movie, but instead chooses to become something more. They could have done the bare minimum, and it would have been enough. But they wanted to make a film that matters and is a true work of art, and coming from a studio like Nickelodeon, they lead by example in showing that film shouldn't just be an easy cash-grabbing movie about making money. Rango sets the standard every filmmaker should have, whether you're a scriptwriter or a director. You should inspire your film to be something more. So after all that, it gets my professional rating of 9 out of 10. It only loses 1 point because if you're not a fan of dry, awkward humor, similar to something like The Office, then you're not going to enjoy this film as much as others. The humor isn't really for everyone. But considering I love that type of humor, it gets my personal rating of 10 out of 10. As after watching this film since coming out, I have gained more respect on every viewing, realizing this film is, in my opinion, for me, it's perfect. So thank you for joining me in this video. Let me know in the comments section your thoughts on Rango down below, and if you enjoyed it, why not check out one of my other videos right here. Please make sure to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so you can be notified about all my videos. It really helps my channel and myself out, so please hit the subscribe button. But thank you so much for watching. I have been the Average Critic, and as usual, I will see you all in the next one.